What if the monsters lurking in the shadows of our oldest stories weren't just figments of imagination? What if they were memories, echoes of something real, something terrifying, something we've spent centuries trying to explain? From the darkest forests to the deepest oceans, every culture on Earth has whispered tales of creatures that defy logic, beings that stalk the line between myth and reality. These aren't just campfire stories, they're the remnants of humanity's oldest fears, woven into the fabric of history itself. Today, we're diving into 30 of the most unbelievable accounts of mythical monsters, each one a chilling reminder that the world is far stranger than we've been led to believe. Think about the last time you felt that primal chill down your spine, the sudden certainty that something unseen was watching you. That instinct isn't just paranoia, it's an ancient survival mechanism honed by generations of encounters with the unknown. Long before science could explain the natural world, our ancestors faced terrors they couldn't understand, so they gave them names: the Wendigo, hungry and hollow, stealing souls in the frozen north; the Kraken, a leviathan waiting to drag ships into the abyss; the Chupacabra, a blood-drinking phantom haunting the Americas. These legends didn't spring from nothing. They're rooted in real events, real dangers, real mysteries that still baffle us today. This isn't just a collection of spooky stories. It's a journey into the heart of human imagination where fear and wonder collide. Across 30 tales, we'll uncover the truth behind the myths, the historical sightings, the inexplicable evidence, the eyewitness accounts that refuse to be dismissed. Some of these creatures may be pure legend. Others, well, you might start questioning what's really out there. So keep the lights on and let's step into the shadows together. The monsters are waiting. The ocean has always been a place of mystery, vast, uncharted, and hiding secrets beneath its waves. Among the most terrifying legends to emerge from its depths is the Kraken, a monstrous beast said to dwarf entire ships with its massive, writhing arms. Norse and Scandinavian sailors whispered of its power for centuries, describing a creature so enormous it could pull entire vessels into the abyss with a single, crushing grip. These weren't just bedtime stories, they were warnings passed down through generations of seafarers who vanished without a trace. One of the earliest accounts comes from Eric Pontoppidan, an 18th-century bishop who documented fishermen's claims of an island-sized beast rising from the deep. Survivors spoke of dark shapes coiling beneath their boats, of tentacles thicker than ship masts wrapping around hulls and dragging them under in moments. Some stories even claimed the Kraken's movements could create whirlpools, swallowing whole fleets in an instant. And while these tales sound like pure myth, modern science suggests they might have a terrifying basis in reality: the giant squid. These deep sea dwellers can reach lengths of over 40 feet, with eyes the size of dinner plates and arms lined with razor-sharp suckers. For centuries, their carcasses washed ashore, half-decayed and unrecognizable, fueling speculation of something even more monstrous lurking in the dark. Sailors who encountered them in the open ocean, often in moments of violent struggle, would have had no frame of reference for such a creature. Is it any wonder their terrified accounts morphed into legends of a godlike predator? Even today, the Kraken lingers in our collective imagination, from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to blockbuster films like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a reminder that the sea remains one of the last uncharted frontiers, still capable of spawning nightmares we can't fully explain. So the next time you gaze out at the waves, remember, some legends aren't just stories. They're echoes of something far older and far more real than we dare to admit. Long before it became a pop culture icon, the Chupacabra was a whispered nightmare across rural Latin America, a creature that didn't just kill but drained its victims dry. The name itself sends chills down the spine. Chupacabra translates to goat sucker, a fitting title for a predator that left behind carcasses eerily emptied of blood, often with puncture wounds precise enough to suggest something far more calculating than a wild animal. Unlike other mythical beasts, this one didn't emerge from ancient folklore. It burst onto the scene in the mid-1990s with Puerto Rico as ground zero for a wave of attacks that left farmers and scientists alike scrambling for answers. One of the most infamous cases came from the town of Canavanas, where over a dozen farm animals were found lifeless in a single night, each with identical twin puncture wounds on their necks. Witnesses described a creature unlike anything in the natural world, a hunched, reptilian figure with glowing red eyes, spines running down its back, and a thirst that couldn't be quenched. Panic spread like wildfire, fueled by reports of similar attacks across the island. But here's where things get even stranger. Officials quickly dismissed the claims, blaming stray dogs or mass hysteria. Yet farmers insisted their livestock hadn't been mauled, they'd been methodically exsanguinated, as if by something with a purpose. Theories about the Chupacabra's origins spiraled into the realm of the extraordinary. Some pointed to secret U.S. military experiments on the island, suggesting the creature was a failed bioweapon set loose. Others whispered about extraterrestrial involvement, citing Puerto Rico's history of UFO sightings and claiming the beast was an alien hybrid designed to harvest biological material. Then there were the scientists who argued it might simply be a case of mistaken identity, a hairless coyote or raccoon suffering from mange, its emaciated frame twisted into something unrecognizable by disease. But none of these explanations fully accounted for the chilling consistency of the attacks or the almost surgical precision of the wounds left behind. As the legend spread beyond Puerto Rico, sightings erupted across the Americas from Mexico to Texas, Chile to Russia. Each encounter added new layers to the myth. Some described a winged beast, others a four-legged predator with metallic-looking skin. The only common thread, the aftermath, dead animals, no blood, and a lingering sense that something unnatural was at work. To this day, the Chupacabra remains a cultural paradox, a modern myth with roots in real fear, a creature that blurs the line between superstition and something far harder to explain. Whether it's a misunderstood animal or something far more sinister, one thing's certain. Where the Chupacabra is mentioned, disbelief takes a backseat to dread. In the misty forests and ancient shrines of Japan, a different kind of monster walks, one draped not in horror but in mystery. The Kitsune or fox spirit is no ordinary beast. These shape-shifting tricksters weave through Japanese folklore with a duality that's as fascinating as it is unsettling. One moment, they're wise guardians, guiding lost travelers or bestowing blessings. The next, they're cunning deceivers, weaving illusions to lead the arrogant astray. Their power lies in their unpredictability, a reflection of nature's own capriciousness in Shinto belief, where spirits and the natural world are deeply intertwined. Legends tell of Kitsune gaining additional tales and wisdom, with each century of life until the eldest, the nine-tailed Kubai no Kitsune, becomes a near-divine being. Some stories paint them as loyal messengers of Inari, the Shinto god of rice and prosperity, their white fur symbolizing purity as they guard shrines and reward the virtuous. But cross one and the consequences are steep. Take the tale of the samurai who mocked a beggar, only to discover too late it was a Kitsune in disguise. By morning, his reputation was in ruins, his wealth vanished, all through the fox's carefully spun illusions. Temples across Japan still bear witness to these spirits. At Kyoto's Fushimi Inari Taisha, thousands of vermilion torii gates wind up the mountain, said to be patrolled by invisible Kitsune even today. Locals leave fried tofu, their favorite offering, to earn their favor. Yet for every benevolent tale, there's a darker counterpart. Rural villages whisper of Kitsune Tsuki, where a fox spirit possesses a human, speaking through them in riddles until exorcised by a priest. Some historians suggest these accounts might trace back to real cases of mental illness, given new meaning through folklore's lens. What makes the Kitsune endure isn't just their magic, it's their humanity. They love, they scheme, they mourn. In one Edo period story, a fox falls so deeply for a human man that she takes mortal form to marry him, only to flee when her true nature is discovered, leaving behind a single tear that becomes a jewel. This blend of whimsy and melancholy captures something essential about Japanese storytelling, where even tricksters have depth and monsters are rarely just monsters. Whether as protectors or predators, the Kitsune remind us that the line between the sacred and the sly is thinner than we think. Deep in the scorching sands of the Gobi Desert, locals speak of a horror that slithers beneath their feet. The Mongolian Death Worm, a creature whose very name spells doom. Known as Olgoi Korkoi to nomadic herders, this crimson-skinned monstrosity is said to hunt with supernatural cruelty, spitting corrosive venom or unleashing electric shocks strong enough to kill a full-grown camel from a distance. Unlike mythical beasts born from ancient texts, the death worm's legend thrives in living memory, passed between generations of desert dwellers who swear to its existence. But here's the unsettling truth. Despite decades of searching, no one has captured definitive proof, only whispers, footprints in the sand, and a trail of baffled scientists. The first Westerner to chase the myth was none other than Roy Chapman Andrews, the swashbuckling explorer who inspired Indiana Jones. In the 1920s, he mounted an expedition to the Gobi after hearing herders' accounts of a blood-red worm, as thick as a man's arm, that could lash out with lethal force. Andrews expected to uncover a new species. Instead, he found only frustration. Locals refused to guide him to known worm territories, fearing retribution from the creature itself. Some claimed it only surfaced during the brief summer rains, vanishing into the dunes afterward like a phantom. Andrews left empty-handed, but his records cemented the death worm's place in cryptozoology, a puzzle begging to be solved. Modern researchers have floated theories as wild as the legends themselves. Some propose the worm could be an undiscovered species of amphisbaenian, a legless reptile capable of burrowing at shocking speeds. Others suggest it might be a giant venomous skink, its bright coloration a warning to predators. Then there's the more unsettling possibility that electrical discharges aren't mere folklore. Certain desert-dwelling snakes, like the sidewinder, can generate static from friction as they move through sand. Could an unknown reptile have evolved to weaponize this trait? Skeptics, however, point to the Gobi's harsh conditions as a breeding ground for mass hallucination, extreme heat, isolation, and the human brain's tendency to fill voids with monsters. Yet the sightings persist. In 2005, a Czech explorer claimed to find strange, fluid-filled tunnels beneath the dunes, their walls scorched as if by acid. Mongolian military patrols still report eerie, high-pitched noises emanating from the ground at night. And every few years, another team arrives with infrared cameras and soil probes, only to leave with more questions than answers. The death worm remains an enigma wrapped in sand, and dread a reminder that even in our mapped and measured world, some corners refuse to surrender their secrets. Whether flesh and blood or something far stranger, one thing's clear. In the vast silence of the Gobi, you do well to watch where you step. Hidden in the corner of every traditional Slavic home, beneath the stove or behind the threshold, dwells a creature as old as the family itself, the Domovoi. Far from a mere fairy tale, this small, bearded spirit with glowing eyes was once considered as real as the household's human inhabitants, a guardian whose temper could mean the difference between prosperity and ruin. Unlike Western boogeymen who exist to frighten, the Domovoi embodies a delicate balance, kind to those who respect him, ruthless to those who offend. Russian peasants for centuries would whisper his name with reverence, leaving out bowls of milk or crumbs of bread as offerings, knowing full well the consequences of forgetting. Stories passed down through generations paint the Domovoi as a capricious but deeply invested caretaker. When pleased, he might repair broken tools overnight, warn families of impending disasters through dreams, or even soothe crying children with his faint, melodic humming. But cross him neglect the offerings, swear in his presence, or rearrange furniture without his symbolic permission, and the pranks begin. Pots would clatter inexplicably in the night, livestock would refuse to eat, and family members might wake to the sensation of an invisible hand pressing down on their chests. One 19th-century account from a Ukrainian village tells of a farmer who mocked his grandmother's Domovoi rituals. Within a week, his barn burned to the ground, though neighbors swore they'd seen a shadowy figure carrying embers from the house unharmed. The Soviet era nearly erased these traditions. Atheist campaigns dismissed the Domovoi as backward superstition, tearing down hearths, his sacred space, in favor of modern electric stoves. Yet even under state-enforced materialism, the old ways persisted in whispers. Factory workers in the 1960s spoke of tools vanishing only to reappear in impossible places, or of inexplicable cold drafts in communal apartment signs. Some insisted that the Domovoi hadn't abandoned them after all. Today, as interest in Slavic paganism revives, so does the lore of this stubborn household spirit. Urban apartments might lack traditional hearths, but many still place symbolic offerings by radiators or water pipes, hedging their bets. After all, as the oldest proverb warns, a home without a Domovoi is a home without a soul. What makes the Domovoi endure isn't just fear, it's the intimacy of his myth. He isn't a distant god or a wilderness phantom, but a member of the family, as flawed and complex as any human. In a world where modernity often severs ties to tradition, the Domovoi lingers as a reminder. Some bonds, even with the unseen, aren't so easily broken. In the moonlit villages of the Philippines, few creatures strike terror like the Manananggal, a vampire so grotesque in its hunger that it literally tears itself in half to feed. By day, it might pass for human, blending into rural life with unnerving normalcy. But when darkness falls, this monster undergoes a transformation straight from nightmares. Its upper torso detaches at the waist, sprouting massive bat-like wings, while its lower half stands frozen in place like a macabre mannequin. The flying half then hunts, using an elongated, tube-shaped tongue to siphon blood from sleeping pregnant women or suck the heart straight from unborn children. It's a far cry from the elegant Dracula of Western lore. This is visceral, body horror vampirism, rooted in deep-seated fears of maternal vulnerability. What makes the Manananggal uniquely terrifying isn't just its feeding habits, but its intimate knowledge of human weakness. Folklore warns it often takes the form of a beautiful woman, gaining trust before revealing its true nature. Some tales describe it lingering near birthing huts or funeral homes, drawn to the scent of blood and grief. The parallels to European vampires are there: the aversion to garlic, the predatory charm. But the Manananggal leans into visceral taboos Western myths often shy from. Where Dracula seduces, the Manananggal butchers. Where European vampires fear crosses, this creature recoils from vinegar and salt, tools found in every Filipino kitchen. The myth's persistence isn't accidental. Colonial-era priests weaponized it, framing the Manananggal as punishment for infidelity or sin. Its attacks targeting impure women. Even today, rural midwives scatter crushed garlic around birthing beds, while fishermen nail dried stingray tails to door frames, a charm said to impale the creature mid-flight. Modern skeptics dismiss sightings as mass hysteria or misidentified fruit bats, but the fear lingers. In 2012, a panic swept Pangasinan province after multiple residents reported a winged figure perched on rooftops, its shadow stretching across moonlit yards. Investigations found no evidence, yet the stories grew teeth of their own. Perhaps the Manananggal endures because it embodies a primal duality: the horror of what happens when the body betrays itself, and the terror of predators who wear human skin. It's not just a monster, it's a warning etched in blood and folklore, one that whispers a chilling truth. Some dangers don't lurk in distant forests. They smile at you by daylight, then split open the night to feast. High in the mist-shrouded mountains of Wales, where ancient stone circles stand silent guard over forgotten valleys, there lurks a beast older than history itself, the Afanc. This monstrous water dweller isn't your typical lake serpent. Descriptions vary wildly. Some say it resembles a colossal beaver with dagger-like claws. Others insist it's a crocodilian nightmare with armored scales, and a few even whisper of a creature so alien it defies classification. But one detail remains constant across every tale: the Afanc's rage. According to Welsh lore, this thing didn't just haunt lakes, it made them, flooding valleys with its thrashing and drowning entire villages in its fury. The most enduring legend ties the Afanc to Llyn Barfog, a glacial lake nestled in the wilds of Bryndburian Gorge. Local shepherds, as recently as the 19th century, refused to let their flocks drink there, claiming the water itself was cursed by the beast's presence. But the roots of this terror stretch back much further. Medieval manuscripts like the Black Book of Carmarthen describe King Arthur himself confronting the Afanc, with some versions claiming he dragged it chained from the lake using his horse, Lamray. Here's where the story twists: Arthur didn't slay the creature. Instead, he banished it to another lake, a chilling reminder that some monsters can't be killed, only contained. What's fascinating about the Afanc isn't just its longevity in folklore, but the possible seeds of truth buried beneath the myth. Wales was once home to castoroids, giant prehistoric beavers the size of bears whose fossils still erode from riverbanks. Could encounters with their skeletons have inspired the Afanc's beaver-like depictions? Then there's the darker theory: residual memory. Wales's oldest oral traditions speak of a time before the lakes, when the land was dry. Geologists confirm that glacial shifts around 10,000 years ago drowned entire valleys in sudden floods catastrophes early humans might have attributed to a vengeful water spirit. Modern sightings are rare but persistent. In 2012, hikers near Snowdonia reported a disturbance in Glaslyn Lake, a wake cutting through still water with no visible source, followed by an unearthly bellow that sent birds scattering. Scientists dismissed it as a collapsing gas pocket. The locals knew better, because in Wales, the old stories aren't just entertainment, they're warnings. The Afanc may sleep beneath the peat-stained waters, but every ripple, every unexplained fog, every drowned animal washed ashore whispers the same truth: some legends are patient. And some lakes, no matter how serene they seem, never forget their monsters. Across the sun-baked plains of ancient Persia, where the dust of empires rises and settles like a slow-breathed beast, there prowled a monster so dreadful even Alexander the Great's chroniclers trembled to record it: the manticore. Part lion, part bat-winged terror, its most infamous weapon wasn't its razor claws or its triple rows of shark-like teeth, but the venomous tail of a scorpion lashing faster than a cobra's strike. Greek travelers described it as the ultimate predator, a creature that didn't just kill, but devoured its victims whole, leaving no trace behind except the echo of its eerie, flute-like voice luring the next unfortunate soul. But here's where history twists the tale. Persian artwork from the same era never depicted such a beast. Instead, their legends spoke of marticoras, a word some scholars argue might have simply meant man-eater, a term they applied to real tigers prowling the Zagros Mountains. Imagine a Greek soldier raised on myths of hydras and chimeras, hearing local hunters warn of a marticoras in broken translation. His mind, already primed for monsters, could easily stitch together the fear of a striped shadow in the tall grass with the scorpions scurrying at his feet, birthing a hybrid nightmare that never truly existed. Yet the manticore's grip on the imagination refused to fade. Medieval bestiaries illustrated it in lurid detail, claiming its tail spines could launch like arrows to paralyze prey from a distance. Alchemists ground what they claimed were manticore claws into love potions, likely just antelope horns, while Renaissance explorers packed their journals with sightings from India to Ethiopia, each account more embellished than the last. Even modern pop culture can't resist its pull, from the Manticore's cameo in Harry Potter as a dangerous creature only experts should handle, to video games where it's a boss battle waiting to happen. So was the Manticore born from terrorized travelers misreading nature's cues, or did something far stranger slink through those ancient hills? Persian folklore is no stranger to supernatural beasts, from the winged simurgh to the shape-shifting divs. Perhaps the truth lies in the middle, a kernel of real predation, wrapped in layers of cross-cultural fear. After all, when you're far from home, surrounded by unfamiliar sounds and the eyes of unseen hunters glowing in the firelight, who's to say where reality ends and the monster begins? When the first snows blanket the northern forests, the Algonquian peoples whisper of something older than hunger, the Wendigo. Not just a monster, but a curse wearing stolen flesh, born from the ultimate taboo, consuming human meat to survive the killing cold. Imagine the scene: a hunter lost in the endless white, his stomach gnawing at his ribs. One desperate choice later, he's no longer human. His body stretches, limbs elongating into grotesque proportions, skin stretching taut over bones that should have broken under the weight of his new hunger. His heart turns to ice, and his eyes, they reflect nothing but endless winter. The Wendigo isn't merely a cautionary tale. Anthropologists trace its roots to real phenomena like starvation psychosis, where prolonged famine triggers hallucinations and violent impulses. 19th century fur trappers' journals describe entire villages descending into madness during brutal winters, with survivors muttering about the wind that speaks with stolen voices. But the Wendigo's terror goes deeper than psychology. It's a cultural reckoning with the ethics of survival. What lines do we cross to live, and what does crossing them turn us into? Modern times haven't dulled its horror. In 1921, a Cree trapper named Swift Runner was executed after confessing to killing and eating his family during a blizzard. His defense: a Wendigo's voice in the storm commanded it. More recently, eerie parallels emerged in so-called Wendigo psychosis cases, where individuals exhibit violent cravings despite ample food. Psychiatric debates rage over whether it's a cultural-bound syndrome or something darker. Yet the Wendigo's real power lies in its ambiguity. Is it a spirit that possesses the weak or the darkness we all carry? Algonquian elders say you don't find the Wendigo, it finds you, in the moment when starvation blurs the line between man and monster. So next time the wind howls through barren trees, ask yourself, is that just the storm or something leaning in, waiting to see if you'll listen? Long before science could explain the plumes of smoke rising from distant mountains, the ancient Greeks gazed upon their volatile landscape and saw something alive, something monstrous. The chimera wasn't just another beast in their pantheon of horrors. This was a hybrid nightmare stitched together from nature's most terrifying elements: the body of a lion, the head of a goat erupting from its spine, and a serpent for a tail, each part capable of breathing lethal flames. Homer himself immortalized it in the Iliad, describing the creature as foremost of portents, a herald of doom that only heroes like Bellerophon, mounted on the winged Pegasus, could hope to slay. But what if this fire-spewing abomination wasn't pure myth? What if it was the ancient world's attempt to explain the unearthly fury of volcanoes? The clues lie in the very land that birthed the legend. Lycia, a rugged region in modern-day Turkey, was home to Mount Chimera, not a mountain at all, but a geological oddity where natural gas vents burned perpetually from cracks in the rock. To Bronze Age travelers, these flames would have seemed supernatural, flickering without fuel, their heat intense enough to melt lead. Lycian coins from the 4th century BCE depict the chimera alongside those eternal fires, cementing the bond between beast and landscape. It's no coincidence that the creature's name, chimera, later came to mean any impossible fusion, nature and myth colliding in a single, indelible image. But the chimera's symbolism runs deeper than geology. That grotesque combination of lion, goat, and serpent wasn't random. Each piece represented a primal fear, the lion's raw power, the goat's unsettling persistence emerging unnaturally from the creature's back, and the serpent's deceptive lethality. Together, they formed a metaphor for chaos itself, a thing that defied categorization and thus defied control. Even Bellerophon's victory carried a warning. He defeated the monster only through divine intervention, a reminder that some forces are too wild for mortals to conquer alone. Modern excavations near Mount Chimera reveal something fascinating. Ancient altars and scorch marks where travelers left offerings, perhaps to appease whatever spirit they believed dwelled beneath the flames. The chimera wasn't just a story to them, it was a living, breathing explanation for the inexplicable, a way to put a face to the terror of a world that could ignite without warning. Today, those same gas vents still burn, though tourists snap selfies rather than flee in terror. But stand there at dusk watching the firelight dance against the stones, and you might just understand how a landscape could birth a legend hot enough to survive millennia. What makes the chimera endure isn't just its monstrous form, but what it represents: the human instinct to name the unnameable, to fight the unfightable. Whether as a volcanic metaphor or a cautionary tale about tampering with nature, Bellerophon's eventual fall from grace mirrors Icarus's hubris. This patchwork predator remains a mirror held up to our oldest fears. Some monsters fade, others, like the chimera, keep breathing fire across the centuries, reminding us that sometimes reality wears the face of a nightmare. There's a sound in the Australian outback that makes even the most hardened stockman pause, a deep, guttural bellow echoing across billabongs at dusk, like a drowning man's last gasp. The Aboriginal peoples have known its source for millennia. The bunyip, a shape-shifting wetland monster lurking in stagnant pools, its form as fluid as the water it inhabits. Some descriptions paint it as a hulking, furry beast with the face of a dog and the tail of a whale. Others swear it's more reptilian, a scaled abomination with tusks and a piercing, hypnotic cry. But one detail remains constant across every tribe's version. This creature isn't just dangerous, it's hungry. When European settlers arrived in the early 1800s, they dismissed the bunyip as primitive superstition until their own livestock started vanishing near waterholes. The colonial newspapers of the 1840s exploded with hysterical accounts. A farmer near Geelong claimed to find a monstrous, unearthly carcass washed up in a lagoon, its features too distorted by decomposition to identify. A shepherd swore he'd been chased by something, half seal, half devil, that moved faster on land than any animal should. Suddenly, the bunyip wasn't just an Aboriginal legend, it was a colonial obsession. Scientists weighed in with theories ranging from surviving prehistoric marsupials to unknown species of freshwater seal, but the most compelling explanation points to fossils. Australia's landscape is littered with the bones of megafauna like Diprotodon, a rhinoceros-sized wombat that went extinct tens of thousands of years ago. Aboriginal oral traditions often describe creatures bearing striking resemblances to these long-dead giants. Could early encounters with Diprotodon skeletons, particularly their massive, bowl-shaped skulls, have inspired the bunyip's more grotesque depictions? The timing fits. European settlers, already primed by Aboriginal warnings, stumbling upon these bizarre fossils in riverbanks might easily conflate them with living monsters. Yet the bunyip's legend took on a life of its own thanks to outright hoaxes. In 1845, the Sydney Morning Herald published a detailed, eyewitness account of a bunyip attack, complete with claw marks on trees and a haunting nighttime wail. It was later revealed as satire, mocking the colony's growing bunyip panic, but the damage was done. Traveling circuses exhibited bunyip specimens that were clearly doctored remains of seals or kangaroos, while gullible naturalists filled journals with sketches of creatures that never existed. What makes the bunyip endure isn't just the mystery, but what it reveals about cultural collision. To Aboriginal Australians, it was a spiritual guardian of sacred waters, a warning against disturbing fragile ecosystems. To terrified settlers, it became proof that this new land was stranger and far wilder than they'd imagined. Even today, reports trickle in from remote cattle stations of something watching from the reeds, its call carrying on the night wind. Science may dismiss it as misidentified birds or echoless waves, but out there where the water meets the wild, the bunyip lingers not just in stories, but in the uneasy feeling that some parts of this ancient continent were never meant to be tamed. Along the misty lochs and rushing streams of Scotland, few creatures strike terror as deeply as the kelpie, a predator that wears beauty like a weapon. This shape-shifting waterhorse doesn't just haunt the water's edge. It invites its victims closer, appearing as a sleek black stallion with a mane dripping wet, its eyes holding an eerie, knowing glint. Children are its preferred prey, lured by the promise of a ride, only to find their fingers fused to the kelpie's hide as it plunges into the depths, drowning them with chilling efficiency. What makes the kelpie more than just another monster is its cunning. Unlike mindless beasts, it understands human weakness, our trust in tame animals, our love of beauty, and twists both into traps. The parallels to Loch Ness's famous monster are impossible to ignore. Long before Nessie became a pop culture icon, Scottish elders spoke of water horses lurking in those same dark waters. 18th century ballads like the Kelpie of Loch Garve describe a creature that could transform from horse to handsome man, its skin forever cold to the touch, its embrace dragging fishermen to watery graves. Some scholars argue these tales served as grim lessons, warning children away from treacherous currents disguised as calm pools. But others point to stranger details, like the kelpie's alleged ability to scream with a human voice, mimicking drowned souls to attract new victims. These aren't just folkloric flourishes, they're the fingerprints of something far older, a primal fear of water's dual nature, life-giving yet lethally deceptive. One particularly chilling account from the 19th century involves a farmer near Aberfeldy who claimed to have captured a kelpie by stealing its bridle, a magical object that granted control over the creature. For years, he forced it to plow his fields until it finally broke free, leaving hoofprints leading straight into the Tay River and taking the farmer's youngest daughter with it. The story echoes a recurring theme in kelpie lore. Those who try to tame the untamable pay a steep price. Even today, Scottish guides warn tourists not to approach lone horses near water, especially if their coats glisten unnaturally or their footprints vanish at the shoreline. Modern explanations range from optical illusions caused by fog and wave patterns to misidentified seals or large otters. Yet the kelpie's persistence in local memory suggests something more. Like the bunyip or the wendigo, it embodies an unspoken truth that nature isn't just wild but willing to deceive. The next time you see a ripple where no fish broke the surface, or hear what sounds like a child's laughter echoing across a deserted loch, remember the old ballads. Some stories aren't just stories, they're the echoes of those who learned too late that not all beauty is safe, and not all horses are meant to be ridden. In the swirling mists of Hindu epics, where gods walk among mortals and curses hold the weight of destiny, few creatures embody corruption quite like the Rakshasa. These aren't mindless monsters, they're master manipulators, shape-shifting demons who wear the faces of loved ones, whisper lies in royal courts, and feast on human flesh with aristocratic relish. The Mahabharata paints them as cosmic antagonists, beings born from Brahma's wrath when he created a race too powerful, too hungry to obey divine law. Yet for all their terrifying power, Rakshasas serve a deeper purpose. They're walking morality tales, reminders that evil often wears a pleasing disguise. Take Ravana, the 10-headed Rakshasa king of the Ramayana. This isn't some drooling beast, he's a scholar who mastered the Vedas, a ruler whose golden city of Lanka shone with impossible splendor. But his brilliance twists into arrogance, his devotion curdles into obsession, and his kidnapping of Sita sparks a war that ends with his own demise. Hindu temples across India carve his likeness not as a mindless villain, but as a tragic figure, his many arms clutching weapons of war while his eyes betray the torment of a being who chose power over righteousness. The lesson is clear: even the mightiest can fall when they let hunger rule them. What makes Rakshasas uniquely unsettling is their mastery of Maya, the illusion that veils reality. Ancient texts describe them conjuring palaces from thin air, disguising rotting corpses as lavish feasts, or mimicking a widow's dead husband to lure her into the forest. Some folk tales warn that certain Rakshasas don't just take human form, they inhabit human lives, slipping into villages as charming strangers only to slowly warp their hosts into monsters. This shape-shifting horror isn't random. It mirrors Hinduism's teachings about the deceptive nature of desire. Just as a Rakshasa's illusion crumbles when exposed to truth, so too do worldly attachments dissolve under spiritual scrutiny. The battle against Rakshasas reveals another layer: their vulnerability to sacred knowledge. Exorcism rituals in Kerala's Theyyam ceremonies or Bengal's Rakha Upabash involve chanting mantras from the Atharva Veda, the vibrations said to tear through their illusions like sunlight through fog. Temples dedicated to Durga often depict her spear piercing the heart of Mahishasura, a Rakshasa who assumed buffalo form, symbolizing divine wisdom destroying ignorance. Even today, rural priests perform Rakshasa Nashana Puja, ceremonies where offerings of black sesame and iron shavings materials believed to repel dark energies are used to cleanse spaces from their influence. Yet the Rakshasa's legacy isn't purely fear. In shadow puppet theatres of Java or Tamil Nadu's Villu Pottu ballads, these demons often provide comic relief, their schemes foiled by quick-witted heroes or their own greed. This duality, terrifying yet ridiculous, powerful yet flawed, makes them enduring figures. They're not mindless forces of evil, but reflections of the chaos lurking in every soul. So the next time someone's charm feels too polished, their promises too perfect, remember the Rakshasa's lesson. Not all that glitters is gold, and not all smiles are human. Glazed in radiant cobalt and gold, the Mahishasura slithers across Babylon's Ishtar Gate, its serpentine body fused with the claws of an eagle and the forelegs of a lion. This isn't just decoration, it's a 3,000-year-old cipher, a hybrid guardian whispering secrets of Mesopotamia's deepest fears and oldest gods. To understand this creature, you must first step into a world where dragons weren't myth but cosmic forces. The Mahishasura's roots coil back to Tiamat, the primordial goddess of chaos, whose split body supposedly formed heaven and earth in the Enuma Elish creation epic. Her offspring weren't just monsters, they were manifestations of entropy itself, and the Mahishasura, with its impossible anatomy, became the living emblem of that untamable power. But here's the twist: this dragon might have crawled from reality before it soared into legend. Ancient texts describe the Mahishasura as both a physical creature and a divine symbol, a duality that's fueled centuries of debate. Some scholars point to the Persian horned viper, a desert dweller whose spiked brow and sinuous movement could inspire serpentine reverence. Others argue for a folk memory of Uromastyx, a spiky-tailed lizard once common in the region, its armored appearance magnified by fearful imaginations. Then there's the more radical theory: could the Mahishasura reflect encounters with a surviving relic of the Cretaceous? In 2005, a fossilized mosasaur vertebrate turned up near the Tigris River, sparking speculation that ancient peoples might have stumbled upon prehistoric remains and reconstructed their owners as living nightmares. The Ishtar Gate offers its own clues. Unlike purely fearsome dragons of Western lore, the Mahishasura appears alongside bulls and lions, not as a foe but as a protector. This was no mindless beast. It served Marduk, Babylon's patron god, as a loyal steed and weapon against chaos. The message was clear: even the wildest forces could be harnessed for order if you had divine authority. Yet the monster's duality lingers. Later Assyrian seals show it wrapped around sacred trees, its body a bridge between earth and sky, while omen tablets warn of its appearances as portents of drought or invasion. Modern excavations add eerie context. In 2019, archaeologists near Mosul uncovered a tablet describing a Mushasu outbreak, where villagers reported encounters with fiery serpents before an earthquake. Was this mass hysteria a poetic metaphor or something else entirely? The line between zoology and divinity blurs when you realize the same culture that meticulously documented eclipses and harvests also believed in dragons that shaped destiny. Perhaps the Mushasu's greatest power wasn't its claws or scales, but its ability to straddle worlds, a reminder that in ancient eyes, the boundary between beast and god was as thin as a gate's shimmering glaze. In the stifling darkness of Central American caves, where jagged stalactites hang like fangs from the ceiling, the Maya feared a creature that blurred the line between beast and deity, Camazotz the death bat. This wasn't some small, flitting nocturnal animal. Ancient carvings depict it as a monstrous hybrid, with the muscled torso of a man fused to the wings and snarling face of a bat, its claws permanently stained with sacrificial blood. To the Maya, this entity wasn't just a predator, it was the literal embodiment of the night itself, a god who ruled over caves, the underworld, and the brutal rituals that kept their cosmos in balance. The Popol Vuh, the sacred Maya text, paints Camazotz's realm as one of the deadliest trials in Xibalba, the underworld. When the hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque descend into its depths, they face the House of Bats, where Camazotz waits with blade-like claws, decapitating the unwary with surgical precision. The description is horrifyingly vivid, bats shrieking in the blackness, the stench of decay, and the sudden, searing pain as a wing brushes your neck, then nothing. But this wasn't just mythic storytelling. Archaeologists have found caves like Acton Tunashil Muknal in Belize, where calcified skeletons still lie in poses suggesting ritual sacrifice, their skulls crushed in ways that eerily mirror the Popol Vuh's descriptions. What makes Camazotz uniquely terrifying is its dual role. In some carvings, it appears as a bloodthirsty executioner, its gaping mouth poised over a victim's chest. Yet in others, it's a protective figure, its wings sheltering warriors or midwives. This duality reflects the Maya's complex view of death, not just an end but a transformative force. The caves where Camazotz was worshipped weren't random. They were seen as portals to Xibalba, places where the veil between worlds thinned. Warriors would enter them during vision quests, fasting until hallucinations brought them face to face with the bat god, who might grant strength or claim them as offerings. Modern excavations reveal just how literal this worship was. At the Cave of the Dead in Honduras, researchers found altars smeared with hematite powder symbolizing blood, surrounded by the remains of sacrificed macaws, their vibrant feathers mimicking the dappled colors of twilight, Camazotz's domain. Even more chilling are the Speleotham thrones, limestone formations where priests or victims likely sat, their outlines worn smooth by centuries of terrified hands gripping them in the dark. The connection to real fauna is undeniable. Central America is home to vampire bats whose stealthy feeding habits could easily inspire tales of unseen killers. But Camazotz transcends biology, it's the darkness given form, the price of immortality paid in screams and spilled blood. Today, echoes of Camazotz linger in unexpected places. The Tzotzil Maya of Chiapas still whisper of jaguar bats that steal children who wander too close to caves at dusk. Meanwhile, cryptozoologists speculate whether ancient encounters with giant prehistoric bats like Desmodus draculae, a vampire bat with a 3-foot wingspan, might have seeded the legend. But perhaps the most haunting legacy is in the ruins themselves. Stand in the mouth of a Yucatan cenote as the sun sets, and you'll hear it. The rustle of wings, the faint, high-pitched chittering that could just be ordinary bats or something far older stirring in the shadows. The Maya knew better than to stay and find out. In the flickering lantern light of a Qing dynasty funeral procession, something moves among the mourners, not the slow shuffle of grief, but the stiff, rhythmic thump of a corpse hopping in its burial robes. This is the Jiangshi, China's infamous hopping vampire, a reanimated corpse with talon-like nails and skin the color of moldy parchment. Unlike the mindless ghouls of Western zombie lore, this creature operates on cruel, almost mechanical logic. It drains victims' chi, their life force, leaving behind not bloody carnage but bodies withered like dried fruit. And how does it hunt? By hopping. Not from some comical weakness, but because rigor mortis has locked its limbs, forcing it to move with eerie, bouncing strides that echo like a hammer on coffin wood. The Jiangshi's origins are as fascinating as they are morbid. During the Qing era, transporting bodies back to ancestral villages for burial was big business, but corruption ran rampant. Unscrupulous corpse drivers would cut corners, strapping the dead to bamboo poles and carrying them upright by night to avoid scrutiny. Imagine travelers glimpsing these processions through the fog, stiff figures bobbing in unison as chanting men guided them along mountain paths. It didn't take much for rumors to twist reality into legend. Yet the Jiangshi myth also has roots in Taoist beliefs about improper burials. If a soul couldn't move on, whether from violent death, unfulfilled vengeance, or botched funeral rites, its body might reawaken, compelled to steal chi from the living to sustain its unnatural existence. Protection against Jiangshi became its own dark art. Taoist priests prescribed counter-rituals involving sticky glutinous rice, thought to absorb evil energy, mirrors to reflect their soul-stealing gaze, and spells written in cinnabar ink on yellow talismans affixed to the corpse's forehead. The most elaborate defenses came from the corpse suppression manuals, medieval texts detailing how to immobilize a jiangshi by scattering coins in its path, a reference to the old practice of placing coins in mouths of the dead to pay the ferryman of the afterlife. The creature's obsession with counting would force it to stop and tally each one until sunrise turned it back to a lifeless husk. What sets the Jiangshi apart from other undead is its eerie specificity. Western zombies swarm in apocalyptic hordes, but a Jiangshi often acts alone, targeting those connected to its unfinished business. Romero's zombies represent mindless consumerism. The Jiangshi embodies bureaucratic failure, a literal walking indictment of funeral fraud. Even its movement is symbolic. Those stiff hops mirror the rigid hierarchies of imperial China, where even in death you couldn't escape the rules. Modern pop culture has softened the Jiangshi into comedic figures. Think Mr. Vampires hopping shenanigans or Jiangshi Zioxys bumbling undead. But visit rural villages in Hunan or Fujian, and you'll find elders who still nail red cloth over doorways at night just in case. Because some legends don't fade, they just wait motionless until the next generation forgets to take precautions, and by then it's already too late. On the frozen edges of the Arctic, where the ice groans underfoot and the northern lights cast eerie shadows, Inuit parents whisper a name to their children: Kalupalik. This isn't some abstract cautionary tale. It's a visceral, bone-deep warning wrapped in the form of a monster so specific, so perfectly adapted to its environment, that generations of children have learned to fear the sound of cracking ice beneath their boots. Picture her, a sinewy figure with seaweed-strewn hair, her pallid green skin mottled like the underside of a glacier, her elongated fingers ending in hooks designed to grip and never let go. She doesn't stalk or chase, she waits. Beneath the thinning ice, her humming lullaby rises through the frozen water, a mournful, irresistible sound meant to lure the curious closer, just close enough for her to burst through the surface and drag them into the depths. The Kalupalik's genius lies in her method. Unlike boogeymen who haunt closets or lurk under beds, she exists in a very real, very dangerous place, the unstable margins where land meets sea ice. Inuit elders describe her amatik, a traditional parka with a child-carrying pouch, but hers is lined with the scales of Arctic fish, the better to cocoon her stolen victims as she swims them away to an underwater lair. Some versions of the legend claim she keeps the children alive, feeding them raw seal meat until they grow webbed fingers and forget their human families. Others say she's a soul collector, delivering the disobedient to Sedna, the goddess of the sea, as payment for safe hunting. But the core message remains unchanged. Wander too far onto thin ice and something will be waiting. Anthropologists have noted the Kalupalek's uncanny resemblance to real Arctic dangers. The sound she makes nearly identical to the vibrations of cracking ice signaling imminent collapse. Her greenish hue, a perfect match for the algae that blooms beneath melting flows, turning the ice treacherously slick. Even her hooked fingers echo the jagged edges of ice shards that can snag clothing, pulling the unlucky under. This isn't just storytelling, it's survival training disguised as myth, a way to encode life or death lessons into something unforgettable. Modern Inuit artists and filmmakers have reclaimed the Kalupalek, transforming her from a mere deterrent into a symbol of cultural resilience. The award-winning short film Kalupalek by Aim Papatsi reimagines her not as a mindless predator, but as a tragic figure bound by her own hunger, a reflection of the Arctic's unforgiving nature. Meanwhile, children's books like The Legend of the Kalupalek balance fright with fascination, ensuring the legend endures not just as a warning, but as a piece of living heritage. Yet for all the artistic reinterpretations, the Kalupalek's original purpose lingers. Visit Nunavut today, and you'll still hear parents murmur her name when kids stray too close to the ice edge. Not as an empty threat, but as a reminder, some monsters aren't just stories. They're the embodiment of a land that demands respect, where one wrong step can mean vanishing beneath the frost without a trace. The Kalupalek doesn't just steal children, she guards the boundary between safety and the unknown, her song a chilling testament to the Arctic's oldest rule: not all ice is solid and not all voices should be followed. Beneath the towering scales of Mat in the Hall of Two Truths, where the air hummed with the weight of eternity, crouched a creature so fearsome even the gods spoke its name in hushed tones: Amet the Devourer. This wasn't just some mindless beast of the afterlife. With the sinewy body of a lion, the powerful haunches of a hippopotamus, and the razor-toothed jaws of a crocodile, Amet embodied the three most feared predators along the Nile. But her role wasn't to hunt, it was to consume not flesh but souls. The Book of the Dead paints a chilling scene. After death, a soul's heart would be placed on one side of Mat's scales, balanced against the feather of truth on the other. If the heart, heavy with sin, tipped the scale downward, Amet would lunge. No dramatic battle, no second chances, just a single gulp. The condemned would cease to exist, their essence erased from the cosmos. This wasn't punishment, it was annihilation. What makes Amet uniquely terrifying isn't her appearance, but her function. She was the cosmic garbage disposal, the ultimate accountability check in a culture obsessed with moral balance. Tomb paintings depict her lurking beside Osiris, her crocodile maw dripping with anticipation, her hippo bulk radiating primal power. But look closer and the symbolism deepens. The lion represented untamed chaos, the hippo embodied destructive floods, and the crocodile signaled the river's unseen dangers. Together, they formed a living metaphor for the consequences of disrupting Mat, the divine order that held the universe together. Even Amet's name whispered her purpose: devourer of the dead, or more ominously, bone crusher. Yet Amet wasn't blindly vicious. She didn't act unless the scales demanded it, making her less a monster and more a neutral force of cosmic law. Some scholars argue she wasn't even worshipped. How do you pray to something designed to erase you? Instead, Egyptians focused on avoiding her attention entirely. Spells from the Book of the Dead, like the famous Negative Confession, were essentially cheat codes for the afterlife, listing all sins one hadn't committed to keep the heart feather light. I have not stolen, I have not lied, I have not caused tears, the deceased would recite, hoping to outwit destiny itself. modern excavations reveal how deeply this fear ran. Funerary amulets shaped like hearts carved from green feldspar have been found clutched in mummies' hands, talismans to keep the organ pure. Some mummies even had scarab beetles placed over their hearts, symbols of transformation, as if to convince the gods they were already reborn. The most haunting evidence comes from CT scans of mummified hearts, showing many were deliberately lightened by removing organs around them, a physical echo of the spiritual weightlessness required for salvation. Amit's legacy stretches beyond ancient scrolls. She appears in modern media as a demonic force, but this misses the point. She wasn't evil, she was inevitability. In a world where the Nile could flood or famine could strike without warning, she personified the fragile line between order and chaos. Even now, her lesson resonates. Actions have consequences, and some judgments, once passed, leave no room for appeal. The next time you feel the weight of a lie or a selfish act, remember the devourer waiting in the shadows of history's oldest courtroom. The scales are always watching. Deep in the emerald heart of the Amazon, where the trees whisper secrets older than civilization, there walks a guardian unlike any other, the Curupira. Picture this, a small, flame-haired figure with skin like sun-baked clay. Its most unnerving feature, not wild eyes or claws, but feet that point backward. Every step it takes is a deception, footprints leading pursuers deeper into the green labyrinth rather than out. To the indigenous Tupi and Guarani peoples, this isn't just folklore, it's ecology wrapped in a warning. The Curupira doesn't merely protect the forest, it becomes the forest's vengeance, punishing those who take more than they need. Stories passed down through generations tell of loggers who vanished after hearing eerie, childlike laughter in the canopy. Hunters returning empty-handed, their snares shredded and rifles jammed with moss. Even modern accounts from Brazilian rubber tappers describe unnerving encounters, tools disappearing overnight, chainsaws failing to start, and always those impossible footprints circling their camps. But the Curupira's wrath isn't mindless. It targets only the greedy, the poacher who kills pregnant tapirs, the miner who poisons rivers with mercury. Leave an offering of tobacco or honey, and it might guide you to game or medicinal plants. Cross the line, and the forest itself seems to turn against you. Scientists have traced the legend's roots to very real ecological wisdom. The backward feet motif mirrors how animals like the tapir leave confusing tracks, a natural defense against predators. The Curupira's red hair echoes the fiery blooms of the flame vine, a plant that thrives in disturbed soil, almost like a beacon marking human intrusion. Even its signature whistle, said to mimic a bird's call, matches the Urapuru, an Amazonian songbird whose arrival signals fertile hunting grounds. This isn't coincidence, it's indigenous knowledge encoded in myth, a way to teach sustainable practices through storytelling. Modern deforestation campaigns have resurrected the Curupira as an unlikely eco-icon. Activists paint its likeness on anti-logging posters, while children's books recast it as a climate crusader. Yet in remote villages, the old fear remains. Ask a caboclo about the sounds in the trees at dusk, and he might just shrug and say, "Ia cute o Curupira," because some legends don't fade, they adapt. And in a world where the Amazon's fate hangs in the balance, perhaps we need a fiery guardian with backward feet more than ever. High in the deathly quiet of the Himalayas, where the air thins to nothing and the snow never stops whispering, there's a name that makes even seasoned Sherpas pause: Mate, the man-bear of Tibetan legend. More than just a bogeyman, the Yeti stands at the crossroads of faith, folklore, and feverish obsession, its massive footprints pressed into both ice and human imagination. What separates this creature from other cryptids isn't just the altitude of its domain, it's the staggering weight of evidence, hearsay, and outright hoaxes that have piled up like avalanche debris over centuries. Take the infamous Pangbach scalp, a shaggy, conical relic kept in a monastery and paraded before Western explorers in the 1950s as proof of the Yeti's existence. Scientific testing later revealed it to be made from the hide of a serow, a goat antelope native to the region. Yet for decades, this artifact was the centerpiece of Yeti lore, inspiring everything from documentaries to diplomatic intrigues, including a CIA-funded expedition to retrieve it during the Cold War. The scalp story encapsulates the Yeti paradox. The deeper you dig, the murkier the truth becomes. Even today, Himalayan monasteries guard similar relics, from shriveled fingers to crumbling bones, all supposedly tied to the creature. Modern DNA analysis often debunks them as bear or human remains, yet the faithful insist science misses the point. To them, the Yeti isn't just flesh and blood. It's a spiritual guardian of the high passes, a liminal being straddling the physical and the divine. Then there's the footprint that launched 1,000 expeditions. Eric Shipton's 1951 photograph taken near Mount Everest's Menlung Glacier. The image, showing a massive, 5-toed imprint pressed into fresh snow, became the Rosetta Stone of Yeti hunters. Shipton, a no-nonsense mountaineer, had zero interest in monsters, yet even he admitted the track defied easy explanation. His ice axe, placed beside the print for scale, revealed a foot nearly 13 inches wide, with a distinctive thumb-like inner toe that didn't match any known animal. Skeptics cry melt distortion or bear tracks, but Sherpas who have seen similar prints firsthand scoff. They describe a gait pattern no bear could create, straight-line strides spanning 5 feet or more, as if the creature bounds effortlessly through snow that would swallow a human whole. The Yeti's cultural footprint runs deeper than any single photograph. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's often depicted as a silent sentinel, its presence marking sacred spaces where humans shouldn't linger. Sherpa oral histories tell of encounters where the creature isn't aggressive, but warning, throwing stones or emitting a sulfurous stench to drive intruders away from avalanche zones. Compare that to Western portrayals of a shaggy brute, and you glimpse the clash between reverence and sensationalism. Western climbers, from Reinhold Messner to television crews, have spent fortunes hunting proof, while locals quietly shake their heads. Why chase what doesn't want to be found? Science hasn't stayed silent. In 2017, a landmark study analyzed 24 alleged Yeti specimens from fur to feces. Most were Himalayan brown bears or Tibetan blue bears, species elusive enough to explain mistaken identities. But a handful, including a femur from a cave in Bhutan, carried genetic markers that didn't match any known animal. The sample size was tiny, the margin for error vast, yet the door cracked open just enough to keep the mystery alive. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between, a rare bear subspecies glimpsed through storm and superstition, its legend outsizing its reality. Or perhaps in the thin air above 20,000 feet, where reality blurs and the cold plays tricks, something far older still walks. One thing's certain, on the roof of the world, the line between myth and mountain is as thin as the ice beneath your boots. High in the crumbling towers of Scotland's most ruined castles, where the wind howls through arrow slits like the screams of the damned, there's a creature waiting with a very specific fashion choice, a hat soaked crimson in fresh blood. Meet the redcap, a goblin so vicious it makes most fairy tale monsters seem tame. This isn't some mischievous imp playing tricks, it's a full-blown murderer, a squat, sinewy fiend with iron boots for kicking victims to death and fingers ending in claws like rusted nails. But its most infamous feature, that hat. Legend says the redcap must keep its cap drenched in blood or it'll wither away to nothing. So it lurks in border castles like Hermitage, a fortress so steeped in violence even the stones seem to whisper of betrayal, waiting for travelers foolish enough to take shelter in its shadow. Hermitage Castle, perched in the lawless Scottish marches, is ground zero for redcap lore. Built where England and Scotland bled into each other during centuries of war, its history reads like a ledger of atrocities: treacherous lords, mass executions, prisoners left to rot in its pit dungeon. Walk its corridors today and guides will point to the redcap seat, a jagged outcrop where the creature supposedly perches, watching for fresh prey. 16th century chronicles tell of missing shepherds found with their skulls cracked open, their blood smeared across the castle walls in odd, hat-shaped patterns. Even Walter Scott collected tales of Hermitage Dalish Cappi, a demon who dipped his headgear in the wounds of slain English raiders. What makes the redcap uniquely terrifying isn't just its brutality, it's the chilling practicality behind the myth. Iron boots perfect for stomping through the marshy borderlands where leather would rot. Those claws ideal for scaling castle walls during ambushes. And that blood-dyed hat, historians note that during the Border Reivers era, clansmen would sometimes stain their caps with animal blood as a psychological tactic, making their enemies believe they'd already bathed in slaughter. The redcap might be folklore, but its traits are ripped straight from the terror tactics of medieval Scotland. Tourists who brave Hermitage gloom report unnerving details, a metallic scent lingering near the redcap seat, or the sound of something heavy shuffling in empty corridors. Paranormal investigators caught a thermal image in 2019 of a heat signature matching a crouching figure, though skeptics blame drafts on ancient stone. The truth may be even darker. Some scholars argue the redcap began as a personification of the castle's own bloody legacy, a way to explain why certain walls still exude reddish stains despite scrubbing. The local sandstone contains iron oxide, which seeps out in damp weather, resembling old blood. But try telling that to anyone who's heard the rasp of iron boots echoing behind them in the fog. Beneath the murky canals of Tenochtitlan, where the Aztecs built their empire on floating gardens and sacrificial altars, there slithered a creature so feared it was considered the god Tlaloc's personal assassin, the Ahuizotl. Imagine a dog-sized river dweller with slick, rubbery black skin and obsidian-sharp claws, but its most grotesque feature wasn't its teeth or its beady yellow eyes. At the tip of its coiled tail, a fifth hand flexed with eerie dexterity, perfectly adapted for snatching victims and dragging them beneath the water's surface. According to the Florentine Codex, Aztec scribes documented this beast's gruesome ritual. It would wait near lake shores, mimicking a crying infant's wails to lure the compassionate close enough to drown. But the Ahuizotl didn't just kill, it collected. Legends claim it delivered corpses to Tlaloc's watery domain, their fingernails, teeth, and eyes meticulously plucked, offerings to ensure the rains would come. The connection to Tlaloc, the storm god who demanded child sacrifices, is no accident. Ahuizotl drownings often targeted fishermen, midwives, and children, individuals associated with water or fertility. Spanish chronicler Bernardino de Sahagún recorded terrified accounts of villagers hearing splashes at night, only to find strange, hand-shaped bruises on missing loved ones washed ashore days later. What chills most isn't just the brutality, but the precision. The Ahuizotl's tactics mirror real-life predatory strategies. Crocodiles use distress calls to lure prey, while some anglerfish wiggle fleshy lures resembling wounded creatures. Even the missing body parts align with Aztec beliefs. Tlaloc's paradise required specific physical tokens for entrance, a divine tax paid in blood and bone. Yet the Ahuizotl might have a living, far gentler cousin, the axolotl. These neotenic salamanders, native to the same vanishing canals of Xochimilco, share uncanny traits with the mythic beast. Both are aquatic, dark-skinned, and possess extraordinary regenerative abilities. Axolotls can regrow entire limbs, while the Ahuizotl supposedly reattached its own severed tail hand. Spanish invaders, seeing axolotls for the first time, even mistook them for deformed Ahuizotl pups. The key difference: axolotls are harmless, their delicate fronds and puppy-like faces making them modern conservation icons. The Aztecs, however, might have witnessed a darker side. Older axolotls, when forced to metamorphose by polluted waters, become aggressive, their features eerily resembling the Ahuizotl's descriptions. Modern archaeology adds grim context. Divers in Lake Texcoco's ruins have found skeletons with trauma consistent with drownings, some with small bones missing, just as the legends describe. Meanwhile, the axolotl nears extinction, its habitat choked by urban sprawl. Perhaps the ahuizotl was never just a monster, but a cautionary tale about water's dual nature, giver of life and taker. Today, as Mexico City's aquifers dry up and axolotls cling to survival, the old warnings echo. Some predators don't have claws. Sometimes the thing that drags you under isn't a beast at all, it's the river itself exacting its price. The rivers of New Zealand don't just flow, they remember. To the Maori, every whirlpool, every hidden underwater cave, every bend in a rushing current is guarded by a taniwa, a shape-shifting spirit as ancient as the land itself. These aren't mindless monsters, they're protectors, ancestors, judges, manifestations of the water's raw power and the delicate balance between humanity and nature. Some take the form of giant serpents, their scales glittering like wet obsidian as they carve channels through the earth. Others appear as sharks with eyes like polished paunamu, or as lizards whose tails churn the waters into raging floods when disrespected. But cross one and the consequences aren't just personal, they're geological. Take the story of Hain, Moa and Tutenkai, a love story etched into Maori oral tradition. When Hain Moa swam across Lake Rotorua to reach her beloved, it wasn't just courage that carried her, it was the blessing of the taniwa who recognized her pure heart. But contrast that with the devastation wrought by the taniwa of the Waikato River, who drowned an entire war party after they polluted its waters with blood from a nearby battle. These spirits don't operate on human morality, they enforce a deeper law, kaishiakatanga, the sacred duty to protect the land. This ancient belief collided headfirst with modernity in 2013, when construction of New Zealand's Waikato Expressway stalled near Maramir. Local iwi insisted the route would disturb a taniwa named Karu Tohai, a guardian who'd inhabited the region's wetlands for centuries. Engineers proposed rerouting the highway, sparking national debate. Critics dismissed it as superstition, while Maori elders pointed to the area's history of unexplained floods and landslides, phenomena science could explain, but which tradition had predicted long before. The compromise, a carved pauanua or boundary marker, erected to acknowledge Karu Tohai's presence, blending modern infrastructure with ancestral respect. The taniwa's legacy isn't confined to construction sites. In 2021, a fisherman off the Bay of Plenty captured video of a massive, eel-like creature undulating beneath his boat, a sighting that made headlines but drew knowing nods from Maori communities. Marine biologists suggested it might be a rarely seen giant ribbon eel, but to those who grew up with the stories, the truth was simpler: the taniwa still watched. And as climate change intensifies floods and droughts, some scientists now collaborate with Maori knowledge holders, recognizing that these myths often encode centuries of environmental observation. What makes the taniwa endure isn't just fear, it's reciprocity. Leave an offering of greenstone or chant the proper karakia before entering a river, and the taniwa might guide your waka safely home. Ignore them, and the water itself might rise to remind you of its power. In a world scrambling to fix ecosystems it once ignored, the taniwa offer a radical idea. Maybe the land was never ours to conquer. Maybe it was always a living thing with guardians we'd do well to respect. Picture a shadow so vast it blots out the sun, a wingspan stretching half the length of a football field, feathers like palm fronds rustling in a storm wind. This isn't fantasy. For centuries, Arab traders returning from the Indian Ocean brought tales of the roc, a bird so colossal it could snatch elephants from the jungle canopy as easily as an eagle takes a mouse. The stories sound impossible until you hold the evidence in your hands. A single rock egg, described in Marco Polo's journals as big enough to roof a hut, wasn't exaggeration. In the 19th century, explorers on Madagascar cracked open fossilized shells large enough to hold 7 gallons of liquid. This was Aepyornis maximus, the elephant bird, a real-life creature that stood 10 feet tall and weighed nearly a ton, vanishing only a few centuries ago. Sinbad's second voyage, where he's carried off by a rock to a valley of diamonds, suddenly makes eerie sense. Stranded sailors watching Aepyornis stalk the coastal forests could easily mistake its bone-crushing talons for something mythical. Even Marco Polo's claim of a bird that seizes elephants with its claws fits when you consider Madagascar's pygmy elephant species, Paleoloxodon, which coexisted with the elephant bird before both went extinct. The math is chilling: a creature with hollow but immensely strong bones, legs built for sprinting, and a beak capable of shearing through vegetation or flesh would have been the island's apex predator. But the rock's legend isn't just about size, it's about cultural collision. Arab traders arriving in Madagascar in the 9th century encountered locals who revered the elephant bird as Vorumpotra, a spirit guardian. The bird's eggs, repurposed as rainwater collectors or ritual vessels, became coveted trade items winding up in sultans' courts. By the time these fragments reached Venice or Baghdad, their origins warped into something grander, proof of a winged titan patrolling distant skies. The rock became shorthand for the unknown, a symbol of the exotic terror and wonder waiting beyond familiar horizons. Yet the truth holds its own tragedy. Radiocarbon dating reveals Aepyornis survived as late as the 17th century, well within recorded history. Dutch settlers' logs describe feathers taller than a man littering the forest floor, and Malagasy oral traditions speak of hunters who stole the last eggs, dooming the species. The rock didn't fade into myth, it was pushed, its reality erased by human hunger. Today, its bones gather dust in museums, its eggs prized by collectors, while the legends keep flying. The next time you hear Sinbad's tale, remember, some monsters don't vanish. They just outlive the world that birthed them. While European werewolves howl under full moons, bound by silver and bloodlines, Haiti's loup-garou stalks a far darker path, one tangled in colonialism, curses, and the unbreakable grip of voodoo. This isn't a beast you kill with a bullet. It's a predator shaped by human cruelty, its origins steeped in the brutality of slavery. Imagine a creature that doesn't just transform at night, but is engineered, a person, often a child, forcibly turned into a shape-shifting weapon by a boka, a voodoo priest who traffics in dark magic. Unlike the tragic loners of Gothic lore, the loup-garou operates as part of a system, its existence a grim transaction between the desperate and the damned. The curse's mechanics reveal its roots in trauma. Victims aren't bitten, they're broken. Stories tell of kidnapped children fed a paste of ground human bones, their bodies stuffed into barrels of magical oils until their skin sloughs off, replaced by something lupine and hollow. The transformation isn't monthly but perpetual, the afflicted shifting between human and beast at their master's whim. And the hunger, it's not for flesh but life force. Loup-garous drain victims' breath, leaving corpses eerily intact, their faces frozen in silent screams. This detail chills to the bone when you learn its likely origin. Slaveholders' fear of suffocation during the Middle Passage, reimagined through folklore's lens. Voodoo's duality shapes the loup-garou's unique terror. Where European lycanthropy is often a metaphor for repressed savagery, Haiti's version reflects real historical horrors. During the Revolution, French colonists spread rumors that rebel leaders like Bauchman Dutty commanded packs of loup-garous, weaponizing the myth to paint emancipation as monstrous. Yet in voodoo, the same creature could be a reluctant guardian. Some Haungan's priests allegedly sent loup-garous to protect maroon communities, their unnatural strength turned against former oppressors. This tension between weapon and warden mirrors Haiti's own struggle, a nation forged in resistance yet haunted by the specters of what it survived. Modern encounters add eerie layers. In 2010, a wave of panic swept Port-au-Prince after the earthquake, with survivors reporting shadowy, dog-like figures prowling the ruins. Psychiatrists dismissed it as collective trauma, but voodoo practitioners recognized the signs. Times of extreme suffering always rouse the loup-garou. Even now, rural mothers hang red cloth soaked in clarin, a local rum around cribs, a ward against bockers who might steal infants for transformation. The loup-garou isn't just a monster, it's a living archive of resilience and terror, a reminder that some curses don't fade, they adapt. And in a land where history's wounds still bleed, the howls you hear at night might not be animals at all, but echoes of a past that refuses to stay buried. Before dragons were monsters, they were men, broken, greedy men whose hunger twisted them into something unrecognizable. No creature embodies this tragic transformation more than Fafnir, the gold-hoarding dragon of Norse legend. His story begins not in a fiery lair, but in a royal hall where he was born a dwarf prince, son of the mighty King Hreidmar. When a fortune in cursed gold blood money paid for the murder of a god fell into his family's hands, Fafnir's obsession consumed him. He slaughtered his own father for the treasure, then fled into the wilderness, his body warping with each passing day. His skin hardened into scales, his limbs elongated into clawed appendages, until the once proud prince became a monstrous serpent coiled atop his hoard, breathing poison into the earth around him. This wasn't just a physical metamorphosis, it was the literal manifestation of greed's corrosive power. The curse's origins trace back to the most infamous gold in mythology, Andvari's ransom, stolen by the trickster god Loki to repay the accidental killing of Hreidmar's son. Andvari, the dwarf who crafted the gold, placed a terrible prophecy upon it. This wealth will drown its owners in blood. Fafnir, blinded by lust for the treasure, fulfilled that doom twice over. He became both victim and villain, a cautionary tale about the cyclical nature of violence and desire. The saga's brilliance lies in its psychological depth. Unlike later dragons that represent mindless destruction, Fafnir retains his cunning and speech even in monstrous form, debating morality with his slayer, the hero Sigurd. His words aren't roars but chilling rationalizations. All men love gold, why should I be any different? Richard Wagner immortalized this duality in his opera Siegfried, where Fafnir's basso profundo voice rumbles through the orchestra like an earthquake. Wagner's adaptation amplifies the dragon's tragic grandeur, staging his death as a slow, almost ceremonial unraveling. As Fafnir dies, he warns Siegfried that the gold's curse will claim him next, a prophecy that plays out in the opera's apocalyptic finale, Götterdämmerung. The dragon's role isn't just to be slain, it's to expose the rot at the heart of heroism itself. Archaeological finds add eerie texture to the legend. Viking hoards unearthed across Scandinavia often contain deliberately broken or killed treasure swords, bent, jewelry twisted, as if to neutralize a curse. One such hoard, discovered in Denmark's Illerup-Adal, included a ceremonial helmet crushed under a rock mirroring Fafnir's own fate. Whether these were offerings to gods or precautions against greed's corruption, we may never know. But the parallel is striking, a myth about the dangers of hoarding wealth, preserved by a culture that buried its riches rather than let them fester above ground. Fafnir's legacy slithers into modern fantasy, from Tolkien's Smaug, whose riddling speech echoes the Norse dragons, to dark reinterpretations like the Ring of the Nibelung comics, where the creature's blood becomes an addictive drug. Yet the most haunting iteration might be the psychological one. Psychiatrists have cited Fafnir as an allegory for hoarding disorder, where obsession with possessions erodes human connections. The dragon's hoard wasn't just gold, it was isolation made tangible, a fortress of solitude built coin by coin. So the next time you hear a tale of a dragon guarding treasure, listen closer. Beneath the scales and fire, you might detect a whisper of something profoundly human, the terrible truth that some monsters aren't born. They're made one golden sin at a time. Under the coconut groves of Bali, where the smoke of incense curls toward the heavens, a different kind of flyer takes to the night, not a bird, not a bat, but a disembodied head trailing its own coiled intestines like a grotesque kite string. This is the Layak, a witch so steeped in black magic that she shed her humanity piece by literal piece. By daylight, she might be your neighbor, the woman selling spices at the market or weaving offerings at the temple. But when darkness falls, her head detaches, her organs unravel, and she takes flight in search of the two things that sustain her unholy existence, the blood of pregnant women and the life force of newborns. The Layak's origins are tangled in Bali's unique blend of Hinduism and animism. Unlike Western vampires, she isn't cursed, she's chosen her path, studying forbidden texts called Lonta Siwa to master black magic. Her transformation isn't a punishment, it's a perverse achievement. Witnesses describe her glowing eyes illuminating the night like embers, her entrails writhing mid-air as she hovers above rooftops. But the most chilling detail, her laughter, high-pitched and rhythmic, it mimics the gamelan music played at ceremonies, lulling victims into false security before she strikes. To combat this horror, Balinese priests wield the kris, a sacred dagger forged in fire and blessed with mantras. Exorcisms aren't quiet affairs, they're violent, kinetic battles. The priest, in a trance, identifies the Layak's human form by spotting her inverted reflection in holy oil. Then comes the Ungurek ritual, a ceremonial stab to the witch's shadow, which paralyzes her flying head mid-hunt. Villagers tell of finding unconscious women miles from their beds, their bodies unmarked but their spirits broken, their mouths tasting of grave soil. Modern sightings still ripple through Bali's villages. In 2019, a maternity ward in Denpasar went into lockdown after nurses reported a floating mass of tissue darting past windows. Security footage showed only a blur, but the next morning, patients' Roman IV bags were found drained, the needles bent at unnatural angles. Skeptics blame mass hysteria or fruit bats, but the Balinese know better. Their rituals endure because the Layak does too, a reminder that magic isn't just folklore here. It's a living, breathing force as real as the daggers that keep it at bay. Deep in the smoky valleys of the Appalachian Mountains, where mist clings to old growth like ancestral memories, the Cherokee people tell of a creature that blurs the line between beast and divine omen, the Actina. This isn't just another dragon or oversized snake. Picture a massive serpent thicker than an ancient oak, its body armored in rainbow-hued scales that shimmer like oil on water. But its most terrifying feature isn't its size or venom, it's the blazing crystal embedded in its forehead, a gem said to pulse with the power of thunderstorms and visions. To encounter the Actina wasn't just dangerous, it was transformative. Warriors who survived the meeting returned either broken or reborn. The Actina's origins weave through Cherokee cosmology like the serpent itself coils through mountain caves. Oral traditions describe it as a fallen star being cast down from the spirit world for its arrogance. Its crystalline horn, called Ulun Suti, wasn't just a weapon, it was a conduit. Shamans believed the gem could reveal the future, heal incurable wounds, or strike an enemy dead at a glance if harvested correctly. But retrieving it required more than brute force. Initiates had to face the Actina in a ritualized hunt, often after days of fasting and purification in sacred Asi sweat lodges. The creature's lair was typically near waterfalls or sulfur springs, places where the veil between worlds grew thin. Success meant more than a trophy. It meant inheriting the serpent's uncanny foresight, becoming a Didonwhiskey, a seer warrior capable of guiding their people through famine and war. Here's where the myth takes a startling turn toward the scientific. In 1835, a meteorite streaked across the Cherokee Nation, landing near modern-day Tennessee. When elders examined the crater, they found not just a smoking rock but strange, glassy nodules embedded in it, tektites formed by meteoritic impact. These translucent stones, later called Cherokee Firestones, bore an uncanny resemblance to the Uktina's legendary crystal. Suddenly, the serpent's celestial origins didn't seem so metaphorical. Archaeologists have since unearthed these meteoritic glass fragments in ritual caches across former Cherokee lands, some carved into amulets resembling serpent eyes. The Uktena, it seems, might have been a cultural memory of celestial events wrapped in the scales of a monster, yet the Uktena wasn't just a relic of the past. During the Trail of Tears in the 1830s, multiple accounts describe desperate Cherokee families speaking of Uktena visions, some as warnings, others as portents of resilience. A diary from the forced march recounts an elder who carried a lightning stone, claiming it shielded his group from soldiers' violence. Even today, Eastern Band Cherokee artisans craft intricate river cane baskets with Uktena motifs, its coiled body symbolizing both danger and protection. The serpent's duality endures, a destroyer that bestows power, a celestial being bound to earth, a myth that might just hold a meteorite's truth at its core. So the next time you hear thunder roll through the Appalachians, consider this: it might not just be a storm. It could be the echo of an ancient serpent's crystal humming back to life, its power still pulsing in the land and the stories that refuse to die. Along the sun-baked banks of the Rhone, where southern France's lavender fields melt into marshy thickets, there once lurked a horror that defied both sword and prayer: the Tarasque. This wasn't just some overgrown crocodile or local fisherman's tall tale. Imagine a beast the size of a warhorse, its back plated with tortoise-like armor harder than castle stone, its 6 stubby legs ending in bear-like claws capable of uprooting olive trees. Its face, a nightmare hybrid lion's mane framing a snarling boar's snout with the spiked tail of a scorpion poised to strike. But what made the Tarasque truly monstrous wasn't its appearance, it was its appetite. Whole oxen vanished from riverside pastures, barges capsized mid-river, their crews never seen again. And when desperate villagers built barricades, the creature simply barreled through them, leaving splintered wood and trampled bodies in its wake. Then came Martha, not a warrior, not a queen, but a barefoot saint fresh from the Holy Land. The year was roughly 48 AD, and her approach to the beast was as radical as it was reckless. While knights cowered behind fortified walls, Martha walked alone into the Tarasque's swampy domain, armed only with a vial of holy water and a hymn. Medieval manuscripts like the Golden Legend describe the confrontation in eerie detail. The monster emerging from the reeds, its roar shaking the marsh birds into flight, only to freeze when Martha began singing psalms. Instead of attacking, the Tarasque knelt, its snout pressing into the mud like a chastened hound. With her sash as a leash, Martha led the tamed beast back to the village of Nerloch, where its own terror turned against it. Townsfolk who'd fled in fear now descended with scythes and stones, slaughtering the defenseless creature before Martha could intervene. The aftermath birthed a paradox. Though the Tarasque died that day, its legend grew fiercer than ever. Nerloch renamed itself Tarascan in its honor, and by the Middle Ages the tale had morphed into something stranger, a festival of atonement. Every June, the townspeople build a massive wicker effigy of the beast, parade it through streets strewn with lavender, then re-kill it in a ritual-blending pageantry and penance. Dancers in scale-covered costumes lurch alongside the float, while children toss bread shaped like the Tarasque's claws into the Rhone, symbolizing the beast's final meal. The climax, a fireworks display mimicking Martha's holy water, exploding over the river where monster and saint once stood. Scholars trace these festivities to pre-Christian river cults, where water deities demanded tribute to prevent floods. The Tarasque's armored form echoes fossilized ankylosaurs unearthed in nearby limestone quarries, bones medieval minds might interpret as dragon remains. Even Martha's role has layered meaning. Her homeland near Bethany was known for taming hyenas, suggesting her legend merged with local traditions. Yet what lingers most isn't the historical threads, but the Tarasque's enduring duality. It's both villain and victim, a force of chaos subdued only to be martyred by the very people it terrified. Today, Tarascon's festival draws thousands, its papier-mâché beast grinning benignly as tourists snap selfies. But wander the Rhone's quieter bends at dusk, where mist curls over the water like the ghost of a scorpion's tail, and you might just hear the echo of an older truth: some monsters aren't meant to be slain. They're meant to be sung to sleep, their stories rippling through time like the river that birthed them. Before griffins soared through medieval tapestries, before the rock cast its shadow over Arabian deserts, there was Zu, the god-thief of Sumerian legend, a storm made flesh with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the arrogance to challenge heaven itself. Ancient clay tablets from Mesopotamia tell of this colossal bird-lion hybrid, a creature so powerful it didn't just ride the winds, it commanded them. But Zu wasn't content with dominion over storms. Its most audacious act, stealing the sacred tablet of destinies from Enlil, the king of the gods, an artifact that held the very fabric of cosmic order. Imagine the stakes: a monster so bold it didn't just raid temples or kidnap mortals, it hijacked the universe's operating system. The Epic of Zu, etched in cuneiform over 4,000 years ago, describes the chaos that followed. With a tablet in its claws, Zu rewrote reality itself. Winds howled backward, rivers flowed uphill, and the stars blinked out like guttered candles. Enlil's fellow gods, paralyzed by fear, couldn't muster a defense until the warrior god Ninurta stepped forward. Their battle wasn't just physical, it was a duel of wits. Ninurta lured Zu into a trap using the creature's own pride, hurling enchanted stones that mimicked the tablet's glow. When Zu dove to snatch them, Ninurta severed its wings with a sickle-shaped sword, sending the usurper crashing to earth like a fallen storm cloud. Zu's legacy echoes far beyond Babylonian ziggurats. Its lion-eagle hybrid form became the prototype for griffins, which later appeared in Greek and Persian art as guardians of divine power. Even the biblical Ziz, a primordial bird of Jewish lore, shares Zu's penchant for sky-spanning wings and tempestuous rage. But perhaps the most intriguing thread lies in modern archaeology. In the ruins of Nineveh, scholars found cylinder seals depicting a winged creature clutching a tablet, long dismissed as myth until they unearthed actual stone tablets inscribed with celestial calculations. Was Zu's theft a metaphor for ancient astronomers grappling with unpredictable eclipses or comets? The line between myth and history blurs when you realize the Sumerians tracked Venus's motion with eerie precision. What makes Zu unforgettable isn't just its might, but its rebellion. This wasn't a mindless beast, it was a disruptor, a challenger of divine hierarchy. In a world where gods demanded obedience, Zu dared to ask, why should the sky belong to anyone? Its defeat restored order, but its ambition lingers in every thunderclap. Even now, when storms gather on the horizon, remember, some legends aren't just stories, they're the reverberations of a time when monsters didn't lurk in shadows. They ruled them. From the icy wastes where the Kalupalik hums her deadly lullaby to the lava-strewn islands where the Tarask once roared, we've journeyed through 30 of the most terrifying and fascinating creatures ever conjured by human imagination. These aren't just campfire stories, they're mirrors reflecting our deepest fears, cultural taboos, and the mysteries we still can't explain. The Chupacabra's surgical precision, the Wendigo's bone-chilling hunger, the Rakshasa's deceptive charm, each one reveals something profound about the people who birthed them. Some served as warnings, others as guardians, and a few as reminders that nature is far stranger than we dare admit. But here's the question that lingers like mist over a moor: could any of these legends be rooted in reality? We know now that the Kraken likely sprang from encounters with giant squids, and the rock's wingspan might belong to Madagascar's long-lost elephant bird. Even the Mushasu's serpentine form could trace back to fossilized mosasaurs surfacing in Mesopotamian riverbanks. So what about the others? Could the Bunyip be a folk memory of diprotodons, or the Tani, or an indigenous understanding of seismic river shifts? Science has cracked open some myths, but others, like the death worm's electric venom or the Jiangshi's eerie rigidity, still defy easy answers. Perhaps that's why these tales endure. They thrive in the borderlands between fact and folklore, where a shadow could be just a trick of the light, or something far older watching from the dark. We'll never stop spinning stories to explain the unexplained, to tame the untamable, or to warn the next generation about the dangers lurking just beyond the firelight. Now it's your turn. Which of these creatures sent a shiver down your spine? Do you have a local legend that didn't make our list, a monster whispered about in your hometown's forgotten corners? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. The world is full of shadows waiting to be named, and who knows? The next unbelievable tale might be lurking right outside your window.